Tonight we are going to give Matt DiBenedetto a bit of a final ride with his Wood Brothers Ford Mustang. This is NASCAR 21 Ignition with the 1.2 patch on PC. I'm driving this with the Logitech G29 racing wheel. Extreme AI difficulty, all assists turned off. We are running a 25% distance race at the Charlotte Infield Road Course. So this is very similar to the race configuration and race distance that you'd see on iRacing's A Open series. I chose to run this road course because while the ISI motor engine is notoriously bad at replicating American oval racing, what it does quite well when it's at its best is European road racing. So I figured, why not give the game every opportunity to succeed? And honestly, my first impressions running these qualifying laps here in both Session 1 and Session 2 were pretty good. Don't misconstrue my comments the wrong way. Don't take this as a sign that the game has improved. It hasn't. Don't take this as a sign that you should go out and buy this game or get it on sale at some point in the future. It's still not going to be worth the money. There's still a lot wrong with it. But the raw car meets track experience was honestly not terrible, and I really did enjoy driving these hot laps here. A lot of games really don't replicate the amount of throttle control you need in a stock car. This game does. You really have to baby the throttle through the infield section. A lot of games don't replicate how methodical you have to be under braking. This game does. Yet, just as I was starting to enjoy myself and be like, hey, I might actually get an enjoyable evening of racing here, the glitches have come back. Pay attention to the top right. It says the last lap didn't count. I never received a warning for cutting the track. There was no dialogue box that popped up saying I cut the track or my lap was invalidated. I'm left to just wonder what I did wrong, and personally looking back at that lap, really don't know what I did wrong. Pause the game, skip to the next session, which basically ends Q1. We are at the top of the charts. Now, as we transition into Q2 and take the green flag, pay attention to the bottom right corner of the screen here. It says my oil temperature on the gauge cluster is negative 460 degrees. Stuff like this is pretty much everywhere you turn in this game. These little gremlins are just sloppy, and it can indicate one of two things. Either the QA team on this was extremely small, and they were more concerned about the really big issues like app stability, or whether your save data randomly gets corrupted versus, nitpicking some of the things that racing fans are going to spot, or they just weren't familiar with the subject matter. They hadn't worked on a racing sim before. They didn't know that, this is an issue and people are going to get upset over it. Both scenarios are not good, considering the company behind this game, Motorsport Games, exists solely to make racing simulators sold to people who are highly analytical and care about things like authenticity and little details done right. Let's talk about some fun stuff. I did see last night, doing a quick search, that Motorsports Games once again is hiring QA guys. The ads were posted about 3 days ago, basically the same day as the investors call. I absolutely sent in my resume. I want good NASCAR games. I want good IndyCar games. I can help make that happen. I'm qualified to help make that happen. I have no idea if I'll hear back from them. And I'm not optimistic I will, based on how this company has acted just in the public eye as of late. The Q3 investor call was really ill-advised. You have the CEO of the company saying reception to this game has been majority positive since the patches have come out, which is objectively not true. And when the CEO makes claims like that, sometimes that mentality can trickle through the rest of the company, or there can even be contempt for people like myself who are trying to criticize this game in a very thorough and intelligent manner. A good example of this in another genre would be Ryan Moody and his very thorough Madden glitch videos. EA Sports cannot stand the guy. Let's start the race off with a pair of bugs. Check the top of the screen here. The checkered flag is out before the green flag. That's not how that works. Now, as we go into the infield road course section of the Charlotte Roval for the first time, pay attention to the top left of the screen where the standings box is. The game starts showing me cars from 35th to 40th as being somehow in front of me. I do not know what's going on here. Maybe the game has standings wraparound set permanently on. It's one of those things you can toggle in the R Factor 2 black boxes. But even I don't recall the R Factor 2 black boxes spazzing out to this extent. And you'll notice through the rest of this video, this situation never actually gets any better. It just remains broken like this the entire time. What's not a glitch is the car that's being driven in the lead right now, the 21 Wood Brothers car. It's really shitty what's about to happen to Matty D and how his career is probably going to get derailed, and this is the end for him. The left spent 4 years making fuck Drumpf a movement on Twitter. You have guys like Eugene Wu and Jeff Tiedrich posting about Trump every hour of every day. You have Kathy Griffin posing with a severed Trump's head for a magazine cover. This is all apparently fine, but meanwhile, Matty D jumps on what is basically a harmless college football chant at this point that's very tongue-in-cheek and just juvenile and silly. This is not okay. This is basically a reason to cancel him, and rumors were that NASCAR wanted to park him. You Americans have some problems. This game's also got some problems. We're going to skip to lap 5 here. take a listen to what the spotter says starting lap 5. I'll zoom in on it here so you can see the subtitles. Again, I don't have a fuel gauge, so I have to take my spotter's word for it. The problem is, every single lap, he told me we needed to pit in a few laps. So we're on lap 10 right now. We're going to skip ahead again to lap 14, and I'm going to get the same thing from him. Yeah, so considering I don't have a fuel gauge, this is an issue because I literally don't know what my pit strategy is. Do I need to pit? I don't know.
We'll be pitting in about 5 laps.
Okay, so I can at least do the math and say maybe I should come in on lap 20. The problem is he never actually gave me a proper countdown.
We'll be pitting in about 5 laps.
So when is it? 20 or 22? I don't know. I just have to guess.
Okay, we have to pit next time by.
Okay, I guess it's working, but there's a bit of a problem. There are 3 laps to go, and I'm leading over Chase Elliott by like 4 seconds. I really don't want to pit, and if you make me pit right now and I lose the race, I'm going to be very unhappy with you. This is the kind of issues you run into when just one mechanic of a game doesn't work, or you don't have a fuel gauge. Thankfully, I have a fuel light in the bottom right of the screen. I don't know how accurate it is. I don't know when it turns on. What a mess. I do know, however, that you can, as you saw in my last Daytona video, you can run out of fuel in this game. However, if you just push the clutch in and coast to pit road, the AI won't take over your car once you're in pit road and coast to your stall and refuel you. You'll just park in the middle of pit road and have to, escape out of the race because nobody on the dev team accounted for this situation occurring. So there's no like DNF box that pops up. The game basically just soft locks and you have to escape out yourself, which is it's really funny. Second issue we're about to run into here, because I am going to pit this lap and be a good boy and just play it safe. I don't actually know what the pit road speed limit is because, unlike every other NASCAR game, there's no dialog box that pops up and says, hey, pit road speed limit is this. So I'm just going to guess 50. And I don't know if that's the speed limit because when I pulled into pit lane, it seemed fine. Nothing bitched at me. But then after like a couple feet, the car's speed dropped down to 40 miles an hour. So is the speed limit 50 or 40? I don't know. Maybe it's both. My head hurts. This is upsetting. And as predicted, nobody else is pit, and I'm dropping like a rock through the rest of the field as all 39 other cars elected to stay out. We crawl into our stall. There's a lot going on here. Obviously, the pit entry is just sad. There's a very ungraceful transition between me parking in my stall and the pit crew like popping into action, which is just ridiculous. There are the ugly black bars on the side of the screen because even though this game supports ultra-wide monitors during gameplay, it doesn't during cutscenes. Ultra-wide support, however, is the least of my worries because for whatever reason the crew decided my car needed to be fixed and start banging on it with a sledgehammer. As you can see, my car is fine. I haven't touched anyone all race. I don't know what the fuck's happening here. Once I get control of my car, take a look at the gauge cluster in the bottom right. The game flips it to neutral as I leave pit road. Why this happened, I don't know. Another point of interest, I just refilled my car full of fuel. That was kind of the point of the pit stop. My fuel light is still on. So not only do we have Schrodinger's pit speed limit, is it 40 or is it 50? We have Schrodinger's fuel mileage race. It's great. I have no idea if I'm about to run out of gas or not. Because, hey, if the pit crew opted to repair a perfectly fine car by taking a giant fucking sledgehammer to it, who knows if they actually did put fuel in the car? I have a lot of questions, and those will be answered in the coming minutes. That's why we've kept this last part of the video in without cuts. Anyway, lap 25 of 27, working on Robo Anthony Alfredo here, who is surprisingly quick, given the fact that he's running in the mid-20s, and you're about to see the differentiation between what I'm capable of as a player versus what the AI is capable of. The AI are very obviously driving with assists on. My braking distance is almost double what the AI is capable of. I have to be really careful under braking not to lock the brakes or wheel hop. This game is a lot closer to a sim than people realize. For corners like this, they take a drastically different line than I do. They brake with almost double the performance than I do, yet my exit in a lot of circumstances is much, much better. And because of this, I have to be constantly paranoid of just where the AI is going to be because we run such different lines. And with rFactor 2's AI having such poor awareness of the player, in a lot of situations, this results in AI cars just completely fucking smoking you, which thankfully I was able to alleviate by catching Alfredo in a bad spot and just blowing past him. Who's in front of us? Obviously, you can't rely on the standings readout for that, but that's Chase Elliott, who we've been, pulling away from for most of the race, and he has just exited the pits, which is great because this is theoretically the battle for the lead. However, with a lap and a half to go, we are somehow in 19th place, which means a massive chunk of the field hasn't actually pitted yet. And we're coming to the white flag. In fact, there's the white flag right now, and judging by the distance that person took the white flag from us, that's almost a 30-second gap or a 20-second gap, there are a portion of the cars in this race who just outright didn't pit. They have completely different fuel mileage compared to the player, which obviously isn't fair at all. Check out this crazy shit that's about to happen. That's James Davison in front of what are supposed to be the leaders, diving off to pit road as he's taking the white flag. You would think they would pick a slightly better lap to go to the pits on? Apparently not. And as we come to white flag and the standings board becomes slightly less unfucked, the reality of the situation is beginning to hit. There are about 5 or 6 cars in this race that just didn't need to pit at all. And they're about to win the race. So now I have some pretty serious questions about my own pit strategy the game tried to make me abide by. If these 5 or 6 cars at the front of the pack didn't need to pit, why do I need to pit? Why did the game constantly tell me, hey, you gotta come to pit road here, you're running out of fuel, if everyone in the race is running an identical car with the exact same engine config? Again, this game isn't super detailed, it doesn't model the difference between like a Hendrick car with X fuel mileage and a Gibbs car with Y fuel mileage. In the game's internal files, it's all just generic 2021 stock car. And yet the AI and the AI pit strategy is so flawed that it'll almost randomize whether a car needs to pit on a given lap or not, which in this case has resulted in 90% of the field throwing the race away and making a pit stop they didn't need. That includes myself because, again, with no fuel gauge, it influenced my crew chief to beg me, hey, you got to come to pit road on this lap or you're going to run out of gas, when you're actually not running out of gas. And as we cross the finish line here in, I believe, 7th place, my fears are confirmed by looking at the leaderboard deltas. William Byron ended up winning this race. He was nowhere near the front of the pack. Truex Jr. in second, Suarez in third. They were nowhere near us, as you can see by looking at the standings bar from the earlier parts of this video. The race for the lead was between myself and Chase Elliott. We were 25 seconds back. That's indicative of a pit stop. It is. So any long race you attempt to do in this game isn't fair to both you and the AI, because the AI pit strategy makes the AI cars, as well as you, pit too many times when you don't need to.